What is up, everybody? It's me, Duke Farley, back at it again here on Lost at Sea. And tonight I am joined by the 12th placer, second juror of Ascendance Live Season 4. I'm here with Eric. Eric, what's going on, man?
Hey, well, you don't have to say my placement every time you introduce me. But hello, I'm doing well, I even prepped a little bit for this interview. It's kind of hard to tell, but I did a little bit of trimming. I found, my favorite color. And yeah, I'm ready to do this.
Eric, I was gonna just say second juror, but I felt like I had to put the placement in there. And you know, I I appreciate you, trimming and getting ready for the interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And speaking of my placement, I remember leaving the house. The thing that I was most proud about was the fact that how like every season they have like the big banner of like everyone in their placement order. I was so glad that I made it onto the second row. I was like, oh my God, if I'm on the bottom row, that's gonna be so sad. But I think me and Grace are like at the very end, so thank God for that.
Listen, you made the jury.
Yeah, I sure did.
You can't be on the bottom row if you make the jury.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about the jury.
But Eric, let's get into it. My first question to you is early on, we see this trend in the pre-jury of people, men that have not played this game getting voted out back to back to back. What say you? Was that a concern for you?
Um, for me, it wasn't so much a concern that the men were going. It was, I mean, up until Chris G told me when he got back into the game that there was a women's thing, I didn't really care much about it. Um, the thing that really upset me, and I didn't even realize it until you just mentioned it, but all those men who were going home back to back were like the people that I was getting closest to. And I think it's just, because like the alumni had their thing and like I don't know, I just had a instant bond with people like Jim and Matt and I thought with Chris G and Chris U. So it impacted me because I felt a lot of those people were my closer allies and they kept going home. And because I was safe for so many of those rounds, I really couldn't control any of that, which was the frustrating bit.
Yeah, I would say watching you throughout the season, frustrating is a great word to kind of describe, your and Michael's relationship. A little bit of frustration. You mentioned a lot of those people that have been voted out early on, were in votes with Michael, somebody that you were working with, but maybe you guys didn't share the same allies. Would you say that that's why you shared maybe the frustration that we see in the confessionals, with Michael?
Oh, 100%. Um, because the plan that Michael and I had going into the game was we said, you know what? You're probably going to get along with the people that you get along with. I'm going to get along with the people that I get along with. We're going to have both sides of the house working for us, and that'll be great. And at some point, that means that we have to sacrifice some people, right? And we have to make sure that there's a balance there, people on both sides keeping us in the game. And I don't think I had truly discussed that latter portion with Michael completely. So whenever he went, he was like, "Oh my God, all my friends are here. Let's just get rid of Eric's friends because what's he gonna do about it?" That's how it felt to me. I know it wasn't like a malicious thing or anything, but yeah, a lot of my frustration in the confessionals came from that, and especially the round that Aaron went home. I remember sitting next to Josh and being like, I don't want this to seem fake or anything, but I am just as upset as you are that Aaron is going home. And both of us sat there when we were doing like the painting thing, just pissed off. And I was pissed at Michael. Josh was pissed at everybody else. But yeah, that's definitely where the frustration came from, I think.
Um, there was a big fight that involved Michael and maybe some of your allies, Matt and Jim. What was your take on that? I mean, obviously public fights are never great, but
Yeah,
that's your partner.
yeah. I felt like that was such an interesting time. for Michael to choose to become the center of attention when both of us were up on the block and both of us could have gone home that round. Thank God that's not what happened. I don't know what in the universe said that it would be other people. But yeah, I remember like I was in the Coliseum and Christopher storms into the room and is like, Michael's fighting with Matt. And I was like, oh no. And so I go out there and I see them arguing in the living room, which you see on camera. And my first instinct, my immediate instinct is to go over to Jim in the corner because he's at the table, like upset as well. And I'm like, Jim, why are they doing this? Like, why can't our partners just get along? And I was like, I was so ready for if any of this fell on Michael, for me to just be full in on the Jim and Matt camp if they got the numbers together. So I think that moment in particular was when I was like, okay, well, I think if Michael goes, it is what it is. He did it to himself. I didn't tell him to get into that fight, so I'm ready to switch courses if I need to.
You and Michael end up winning a captain in, the early stages. I think it was round six, where you guys win captain. And I kind of just wanted to ask you, did you guys have a plan with setting up the teams? I know you guys had to divide the teams again, but was there a plan between you two? And then if not, like what happened when, push came to shove and you had to pick teams?
So as soon as we won, I was like, okay, this is great. We're outside, we're far away from the area, the living room where we have to make the decisions. So I was fully ready to go up to Michael and be like, okay, we're walking ahead of the group and we're going to plan everything out on the way there. And instead, Papa told us, oh no, you're doing the picks right here. And so Michael and I didn't have an opportunity to talk, and we had never discussed a plan because I think in our minds, like the night before, we were worried about our votes. It never came up like, okay, if we win captain, what do we want to happen? I know my personal plans. I had I had two really missions. The first was to help Taisha out because when she was captain a few rounds prior, or maybe even the round prior, she turned to me in the kitchen and she was like, what do you want? And I said, don't put me with Billy because Billy had thrown my name out when I was up against his mom and Chris Yu. So I was like, I'm going to help Taisha out however she wants me to do that in terms of team picks. And so that's why I picked her for my team. And the other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to get closer with the people that Michael was close with, but I wasn't necessarily. So mainly that was like Erica and then also Aaron, because I thought Michael at that point was closer with Aaron. Um, and then they tell us we have to split the teams up. I turn to my team and I go, what do I do? And Aaron looks over at me, and I swear in my mind, in my ears, maybe I'm just really bad at hearing, she said, put the girls together. So I said, easy. I'm going to set Taisha up. I'm going to put her with Christopher. And I don't even remember who was with those two. I was like, they have an easy target. I think it was Adam. And I was like, Aaron, Erica, and Grace, I think you all can be together. Easy. Love it. Beautiful world. I found out after the season that Aaron asked me to not put the women together. So she was very upset at me from that moment. And I didn't have an opportunity to talk about it with her because again, when I was picking teams, I really thought that I'd have a chance to get closer with them. And instead, they put me, Michael, and Stacy up on the balcony, and we couldn't see or hear anything. We couldn't talk to anybody. So I was like, well, I don't have an opportunity to really strategize or like work with anybody except Stacy. So it was just a whole. I think if that challenge had come like a round earlier or just like they had set it up differently, luck would have been on our side and we would have been able to plan it out a little bit better. Yeah.
Speaking of luck being on your side, there Ascendance does this thing where if somebody falls or somebody takes a tumble, in a challenge, they like to do the old 1-2 replay.
Yeah.
Taisha fell victim to it, in her season, and I think we saw it happen to you here in this season with the sponge challenge, taking a little bit of a tumble and then they replay it, on ends.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that?
Um, You know what? I'm just glad I made the edit for the episode because after the first few rounds, I was like, girl, I was like, I haven't done anything. Like, I haven't been a part of the votes. Like, I've just been sitting here on my ass. So, like, you know what? What better way to get on camera than to fall on my ass? Um, but yeah, it was. I do remember production in particular coming up to me after the challenge, and they were like, "Are you okay?" Like, so they don't just make fun of us; they also like make sure like, hey, that looked pretty tough. um, but yeah, and yeah, it was a fun moment. I wasn't hurt from it. And that brought together with the fact that I had no idea how to tie balloons, uh, just made it even better.
Brutal,
Especially
brutal
because
combo.
literally, and I was in the bathroom right before we did the challenge, and I was looking up on my phone because we had already decided that I was going to do the balloons, so that Michael didn't have to. And I was on my phone in the bathroom, like, how do you tie a balloon? And so that is how I learned, like, right there on the spot, how to do like these tiny little balloons that I was doing. Um, but yeah, it was a fun challenge, and I'm very glad that I got the slow mo replay edit.
I, I'm sure in, episodes to come and future seasons, we'll see, we'll see that again.
Oh, for sure. Even within the same season, Taylor got it too.
Yes, yes. Um, Eric, I want to move into, your vote out where you go home 5-2. And you had voted for Rachel. That was your planned target. Somebody else, I think, does vote alongside you here. I don't remember exactly who it was, but run me through, you know, first of all, what happened and who you thought you had and who did you not have, and then your message after when you're eliminated. You give it to some people.
Yeah, yeah. So first off, shout out to Eli. That was my other vote that
Yeah.
that round. So the strategy for this vote actually started the night prior, because the night prior, after the Aaron vote and everything, I was like, okay, this is too much. Literally all my allies are leaving, so I need to step into gear and make something change because there were two duos in particular, Erica and Rachel and Eli and Taisha, who had never been mentioned once, and I was like, that needs to change. So I was talking with, I was thinking about it during the painting activity and when we went outside to do the blindfold challenge. And I was like, Josh is really upset about this. Michael is whatever, but I'm sure we can come up with something. And then when I walk back into the house and I see Chris G is there and he's like, the women, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, this is my perfect opportunity. We're going to turn it on Erica and Rachel. So I am like, Chris G, you are my person. You are my rock. I am totally with you. I go downstairs. I say, Josh, we have an opportunity here. And I start thinking like, we get Taisha in on it, we get Eli in on it, we get all these people, Christopher even, Stacy, and then Grace comes out and says, "Actually, guys, I'm out." And you know what? Fair enough for her. There were a lot of people that round who were like, "Yeah, let's respect it. Let's make it an easy round. She can go away." But in my head, she was a number that I could have used against Erica and Rachel. So I was still telling people like, I kind of don't want this to happen. But every single person, including Michael, was like, No, we're gonna send. She's gonna go." Um, so that was really, really frustrating. And I was just like at my limit. I remember after that round, after Grace leaves, Josh, Michael, and I go downstairs, and I literally yell at Michael. I wish it was on camera. I literally am like, "You are handing the game to these girls. Like, wake up, smell the road, do whatever you have to do. Like, Erica and Rachel need to go home, and I don't understand why you're throwing the game for them." And Josh is there completely agreeing with me. I think that conversation finally like turned Michael's brain on, like, "Oh, okay, yes, yes, I'm with you." And so I got me, Josh. I actually don't know if Michael was in the room, but Taisha and Eli all in a room together that night. And I'm like, listen, this is the plan. We're getting them out. It's happening tomorrow. Like, done deal. We get Stacy and Christopher on side. Like, we have majority. Everything's dandy. So the next morning, the round plays out. And while we're all going around strategizing for it, I'm in this really weird position where Rachel is throwing out Chris G's name, and I think also Christopher's name to me, and Chris G and Christopher are also kind of doing the same. It's like in my head, it's between the three of them. And so I'm trying not to talk to like Rachel that much. I'm trying not to talk with Adam that much because I know they're guaranteed votes for Rachel. And so it was just like this, it felt like this weird balancing act of just like trying to just keep reconfirming like Christy got you, Christopher got you, Taisha, Eli got you, me, more than enough votes. Um, and then when it came to the vote, I actually was convinced walking into the voting room, and you probably can't hear it on the camera, but I literally say, I'm like, I think I'm going home because Rachel has an idol. And I just felt it in my heart that Rachel had a pendant in her pocket and she was going to play it. And that's how I was going to go home. So for the votes to come out and I just get the majority vote, I was like, okay, no, this is fucked because every single one of you just sat there and agreed with me that Erica and Rachel were the biggest threats. So I said, you know what? You want them in the game so badly, they can win at the end. And that's why I walked out and I was like, Erica, Rachel, you are getting my vote because fuck everybody else. And that honestly would have been true, and it would have gone even over Michael because if Michael at that point cut them, I would have been pissed. Um, but also I think in the back of my mind as well, I was hoping that doing that would put a target on them and hopefully I would see them in the jury soon after me. um so yeah, it was a bamboozling moment. I was very shocked, and I just let the emotions fly, but that's basically how the round played out.
Were you disappointed with, Eli was the only one that ended up following through on the plan. Were you disappointed with the others that did not?
I was disappointed in Taisha, 100%, because I figured that she would have the gumption, even if she thought the votes weren't there, to still vote with the minority. And I was confused about Chris G, and it took me a long time to learn after that he had reconnected with the girls, and that's what happened. But I get it, I understand. And with Christopher, it's Christopher, like he does his thing. So I was like, okay, that's fair. But yeah, I would say I probably most disappointed with Taisha, and just really happy with Eli.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
always fun, when you get voted out, but you have that one person that was on your side. You're like, I like that person.
Yeah. I was like, Eli's my boy, especially because he and I had not talked the entire game until the night, like probably around Grace's vote. And then suddenly we were having conversations like every 5 minutes, it felt like, and like really lengthy, big ones about the game and everything. So I was like, you know what? Regardless of whether or not he knew, I don't think he knew that he was a minority there, but I was like, I'm so glad that Eli did that. I really appreciated it.
Eric, it was so fun watching you in the season. You were kind of a contrarian when it came to the duo aspect, I thought, which was brought a great little thing to the show. But the beauty of when this exit interview is taking place is I get to ask you about, what happened in the jury, what was your decision making, and you are the only one to have voted for, Stacy this season. But before I ask you about, what happened with that. I noticed during the finale that whenever it would pan to the jury and people were laughing and clapping and having a good time, it seemed like you were kind of like stone cold, like not giving any reaction. Can you shed some light on were you pissed at somebody?
um, so I was a little miffed for a few reasons. Um, One, I'm not a huge like, no offense to anybody in the room, absolutely no offense. Like, I don't laugh if I don't find something funny. Um, and I don't clap unless I feel it's worth clapping for. Um,
Somebody
and
had to say it, Eric. Somebody had to say it. I
it,
feel that so much.
like especially when the jury votes were being read out and they were clapping after every single one, I was treating it like a graduation ceremony. Like you're not allowed to clap until the end because otherwise this is going to take 10 years. Like especially because I felt the vibe. We all knew who the winner was. Like Taisha very clearly was going to win out. So I was just like, let's just hold it. um, and then also a little behind the scenes stuff. I was sitting on my stool. The cameras were directly between me and the finalists. So I could not see them the entire finale, including the question where like they had to raise their hand for each juror. I was like, I don't even know who raised their hand for me. So I was sitting there staring at a camera the whole time. I think the only way I could see them was like in the mirror. I could barely see Christopher's head. But yeah, so I was just tired. I was like, let's get this over. Let's do the celebrating after. Like I'm ready for that part. Um, and yeah, yeah.
So good,
That's
so good.
basically.
It was so fun. It was so funny to see this. Because as somebody who's watched all the seasons, I do agree with you. A little bit too much clapping, a little bit too much, hugs at the end of everything. So I like I like that you stayed true to yourself in
Yeah,
that regard.
yeah.
Um, but you are the only person who had voted for Stacey, and I know that people there was maybe a segment at the end of the episode, describing the reasoning, but I did not watch that. So I wanted to know, why did you vote for Stacey? What compelled you to go that way?
Um, what compelled me to vote for Stacey was it is what it is. I'm the kind of juror I go into the finale knowing exactly who I'm voting. Unless you like really fuck it up, like it is what it is. I'm gonna vote for you. And when I was in the jury house, I was just thinking like this girl hasn't gotten a single vote against her name. And I thought about that. I kept hearing about the round that Eli went home when like everybody's names were thrown out or they were safe. She was the one person that round who was not immune and did not have her name written down. So I was like, period. Like she slayed the game. I also had a really good connection with her in the game. I felt like she played the social and strategic game really well, and she won out a bunch of comps at the. I was like, what else should I be looking for in a winner? Um, and then during the jury roundtable, it also became a little bit out of spite because I remember not too many people rooting for her very hard or just really hyping up Taisha and Christopher, which fair enough. They both played really good games as well. But I was like, come on, like this girl, like, and everybody was like, I really feel like she didn't have conversations with me or like she didn't do anything during the game. And I'm like, there's no way that she just sat on the sofa the whole time and literally just sat there. Like she was in conversations, like you see her in a lot of them giving input, taking information. Like she was doing a lot during the game. Um, and then at the very end, it was also just because I came to the realization that nobody else was going to vote for Stacey, especially after she said the comment about like, you know what, I didn't come here for the win necessarily. I came for the experience. And I was like, oh no. So I even when I hugged Taisha after the finale, I was like, listen, you deserve your flowers. I'm very proud of you. I needed to make sure she wasn't a zero vote finalist. And all of those reasons are why I voted for Stacey at the end.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's nice. Do you kind of said that you had a feeling that once she had said that comment about, she had already won the game, with just being there and doing what she wanted. You felt like it was, she wasn't going to get any votes there.
Yeah, like during the jury roundtable, it was pretty clear that I was the only one like really defending her. And then especially because I think that's the only time I spoke up during the jury roundtable. But then once she said that, I could just feel the vibe around me shift. And like I looked at the other people's faces, they were not having it. So I was like, yeah, she's 100% not gonna get any votes here.
Were you surprised with not like people weren't open to, voting for Stacey, but like maybe weren't as willing to hear Stacey out, it seems like.
I was, because it like this is my tunnel vision brain, I guess, but like I saw her game so crystal clear, like everything that she had done, even though I didn't actually see the game. I was in the jury house for most of the game. It felt like, but like I could see what she was doing and all the moves that she was making. And even though they weren't like huge, big, flashy, like I'm playing this on you and this on you and blah blah blah. Like it shocked me how that like none of the other jurors felt that way, that none of the other jurors saw her game. I think in retrospect I get it more because those people played more closely with Taisha and Christopher. That's why they felt Christopher backstabbed them so much more than say Stacy or Taisha. um so I get it in retrospect, but in the moment I was so confused. Like I did not expect going into that jury roundtable that I would be the only one there that like, and they did all have like their own little comments about her about like what she did well, but like I was the only one that was truly invested with her game.
Yeah, because you could argue, like looking at all the finalists, that there wasn't really a flashy move that any of them made. It seemed like they were pretty, in terms of like big time powers or, charging and leading boats. Not really. I mean, that wasn't any of the finalists, I felt like this season.
Right. Like maybe a little bit Christopher, but I feel like when he led votes, it was like 50-50 whether they were going to work or not. Like, oh, I remember during the jury roundtable, they mentioned a lot how like how up to bat he was to fight for Chris Yu and everything. And I just like, I remember sitting there being like, Chris Yu, like got one vote with him. Like he was completely like nobody else voted with him. And then also that put a target on Christopher. Like part of the reason people voted Chris Yu, at least from what they were telling me, was because they were not into Christopher playing so hard for Chris Yu. So I was like, yes, he pushed some things. Like for example, he was one of the first ones that actually said my name. And he was successful with that. But like overall, I felt like it was pretty neutral for all three of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Say Taisha's not in the final three and Adam makes the final three instead. So Taisha's voted out at final four and Adam's here in the final three. What does that look like for you? Do you think you'd still vote Stacy in this scenario, or did you value Adam's game?
Ooh, I would have been more conflicted, I think. I think in general, Adam probably wins out. Like most of the jury, a lot of his close allies were right there. But also for me personally, it would be like, yes, I see Stacy's game and I love it, and like it's everything that I strive for in my game. But at the same time, I had been against Adam. It felt like for so long, like against his duo and Erica and Rachel, that I was like, I gotta give him props for making it to the end and like being the last surviving member of his alliance, and like there has to be something said for that. I think if I had gotten the impression that most of the jury was voting for Adam, I probably would have voted for Stacy. But if I didn't, I honestly don't know who I would have gone for there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little interesting, like what if?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Eric, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to do the exit interview. But my last question for you here is, what was your favorite part of the entire experience? Could be something that, happened during the game, or hell, could be something that happened after.
Ooh, I think this is gonna sound bad. I kind of have two moments. Both have to do with Michael. The first was um I really enjoyed yelling at Michael and just like relieving a lot of that tension in that moment where I yelled at him about Erica and Rachel. Um, like like all of the frustration and anger and just everything poured into that moment, and it felt so nice to get off my chest. Um, I also really liked, or I find it really funny how so right before Matt and Michael get into it, I was outside on what they call the rectangle of cement. And I was just sitting there recording my thoughts on the game and everything so that I had, I could keep my thoughts in line for when I did my confessionals. Um, and so I was doing that for like maybe half an hour even. And this is like literally night one. So I have 2.5 rounds to go through, and I didn't vote any of them. So um, I went through a lot of the very specific information. I finally get wrapped up. I'm like, okay, I think we're done for the night. And then I walk inside, and almost immediately, I go downstairs, start having a conversation, and that's when Christopher walks into the room and is like, they're fighting, like there's a big fight. And I was like, come on, like I cannot get a break today.
You just take
Um,
out your recorder again.
I probably should have, honestly, like, because I had a lot of thoughts after that fight as well. But yeah, I just anytime I had that like heightened emotion of like, oh my gosh, those were really fun moments for me. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think those are the two.
Well, Eric, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's been fun. Loved you on this season. I'm glad you played. And yeah, I just appreciate you taking the time to do the exit interview.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I am very glad that I did it.